It is 7 o'clock. It's March 24, 2015. Welcome to the Ojai City Council meeting and Ojai Redevelopment Agency successor agency. And could I have roll call?
Councilmember Clapp? Present. Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Here.
Mayor Lara?
Here. Could I have Mayor Pro Tem Blatz lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
After me, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a segment for public comments. It is a time set aside during the meeting for members of the public to address the City Council/successor agency board on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matter raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the council/board and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than the emergency items, no attention can be taken. Persons wishing to address a council board are requested to fill out a speaker's card prior to the council's board reaching this point on the agenda. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes or less. Our first speaker's card I have as Deborah Pendry. Yeah, sorry, forgive me for that.
Thank you, Mayor Lara. Deborah Pendry, 309 Riverside Road, representing the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. As you may well know, the coalition promotes water efficiency and conservation first, but after reducing comes reusing. The County of Ventura has adopted a new gray water regulation tier that is coming down the pike to the cities in Ventura County. But as Steve Offerman at Supervisor Bennett's office shared with me, cities don't have to wait to be asked to formalize this new gray water installation tier. As you know, we have two options right now under the California Gray Water Code. Washing machine systems that do not alter the existing plumbing do not require a permit as long as the installer follows specific guidelines. This change went into effect in 2009 and written into the state plumbing code in 2011. This is identified as Tier 1. The other option has been everything else, which could be very cumbersome and expensive process. Now, thanks to Steve Offerman, who happened upon an article that Los Angeles County did this legally, a Tier 2 option exists at the county level. This allows a resident to install a gray water system on other allowable single fixture systems, such as your bathroom sink and shower, if again it does not change the existing plumbing and is gravity fed. Now, it does require a permit, but the process has been streamlined and made easy with a very inexpensive permit. Tier 3 will continue to be more extensive systems that would use pumps, change plumbing, etc. The Green Coalition is actively working on gray water education and support for the community. Upcoming, we have a laundry to landscape presentation at our popular Friday night potlucks. The next one is this coming Friday, March 27th. Then the next day, Saturday, March 28th, we are hosting a gray water home tour in Miners Oaks. And finally, Saturday, April 25th, we are conducting a do-it-yourself gray water installation workshop. And the City of Ojai is helping sponsor this. And all the details can be found for these three events at the Green Coalition website, ohiValleyGreenCoalition.org. Gray is the new green. And with 38 seconds left, everybody should know about this coming Saturday also, Ojai Valley-wide Residential Community Beautification Day that the city and county of Ventura are hosting together. It's at the Nordhoff High School, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. People can bring green waste, recycling, e-waste, non-recyclable yard waste, all kinds of stuff. So they can call Ojai Public Works to get more information on this, but this is a way to get rid of your bulky items and clean up the yard, basically, and you can bring it for free to Nordoff High School.
Did you say the
Okay.
date? It's this Saturday, what time?
9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
9 to 1? And you can do electronic waste?
Yep, they're doing electronic waste, bulky items, metal, green waste, recyclable and non-recyclable. Yeah.
Great.
So E.J. Harrison is hosting this with the city and the county.
Where do they go to find more information?
You know, nobody seems to have anything on a website, so you have to either call Ojai Public Works or call the Integrated Waste Management
Okay.
Department at the county. I've tried and yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everybody got this in with some kind of bill, but yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
That's it.
thank you. We'll make sure and see if we could get it on our website. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. William Ulrich?
Good evening, council. William Ulrich, 487 Gridley Road. I was looking at the I was looking at the city website today, and I was looking for the city attorney RFP, and I couldn't find it. So I'm going to ask a few questions, which I don't expect you to answer, because they're more for the record than the answers are, perhaps. And they may be somewhat complex. The questions I don't think are, what is the status and purpose of the city attorney RFP? How is the RFP expense justified? Is this RFP the policy and a deliverable of the city council, or is it a product of the city manager, Mr. Clark's interest in serving as the gatekeeper of the city attorney, along with the council agenda setter, as he referenced at the February 24, 2015 council meeting? That's all I have on that subject. But I sure would like to know what it even looks like. I think that in the interest of transparency of the public, it'd be nice if it was accessible someplace besides an arcane employment website for city attorneys. At the March 18, 2015 Planning Commission meeting, there was a bare quorum of 4 members. They approved the Weil Tennis Academy DRP 1105 Revision 02, and thereby prejudiced the property rights of several residential neighbors of the Weil Academy. Please note that 2 of the 4 members of the bare quorum Planning Commission quorum do not reside within the city of Ojai and cannot vote in city elections. I brought this subject up several times over the years, over the past year. I believe Councilman Blatz has brought it up several times as well. Is this fair? Is this governmental due process? And how can you continue to justify and support this condition? It needs to be changed. The Planning Commission, furthermore, appears to routinely meet privately on the Tuesday before the public Planning Commission meeting with staff, that is the city manager and the community development director and others, to discuss the upcoming meeting agenda items. Is the council aware? Does the council condone and approve this activity? Is the reduced complement of the Planning Commission, as I understand it, which attends these meetings, intended to circumvent the transparency required by the Brown Act? Who developed this practice? How long has it been shaping the planning and zoning policies for the city of Ojai? Thank you.
Mr. Ulrich, do you have a copy of those questions?
Funny you should ask.
Yeah. Is it possible if I could receive a copy? We'll get answers to yes. Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, is there any reason that the RFP for the city attorney has not been published anywhere?
No, in fact, it was on one of the city council agendas and approved by the city council in a public meeting, so it should be posted with that meeting. But
Okay. So it would be part of that meeting packet
yes, it would.
and would be available where, online?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to get answers to you, Mr. Ulrich. I have speakers cards, but they don't specifically say if they're public comment, so I'm going to name them off, and if they're not, just identify if your speaker card is related to an item on the agenda. First speaker card, Patty Pagling.
It's not an agenda item.
Okay, public, then you could step forward.
Good evening. I have some papers. I don't know if they were given out to you. It's information about the spraying that's happening on the Ojai Valley Trail. And I just want everyone in the Ojai community and on the Ojai City Council to be aware that they are spraying a glyphosate product on the Ojai Valley Trail starting, yesterday. And something just came out about glyphosate being classified as a carcinogen by the International Cancer Agency, and the group calls on the U.S. to end herbicides use and advance alternatives. So I'd really like to encourage the Ojai City Council to look at the IPM. I don't know exactly what's in the IPM plan for the city, but if there's anything that Transition to Organics can do to help to start the process of really enlivening that and creating some movement forward in looking at the alternatives and really finding something that will work. I think it's imperative that we really take it seriously. I know that Roundup seems to be a go-to kind of a product that everyone has considered just, something that you spray on any old weed, and there have been a lot of false advertisements put out by Monsanto. They were actually sued in France, and they had to withdraw their advertisements, their false claims of being that it breaks down, biodegradable. It is not a safe product to use, and it's dangerous for all of us, including the wildlife, and it kills what's in the soil. So I have some information that I gave you there that has to do with Arcata, and they are a very forward-thinking city. They have already banned pesticides throughout the city, and I think that's something we could look to them for guidance about. It's really encouraging to know that that is possible. So thank you for listening, and I would like to meet with any of you that are interested and see what we can get going. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Patty. And I think it is a valid question, and I'll see if we could, I don't know what the best approach is, if we have to agendicize this item or bring it up in our goal setting, or we do use, we know the practice that we hold?
I don't know the details of it. We are very, we use very little.
Yeah. I think in the past, I remember this being brought up to our attention the last 2 years a couple of times and working with the county. But I think that it would be something new to bring up in a future agenda item.
I'm sorry, are you saying put something on the agenda asking the county not to use it?
Or I don't know, or just looking into it, what our practice are, and if there are alternatives to this, to spraying, or
So
seeing what
it-
the city of Arcata is doing.
Okay.
Arcata,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
would it be improper to ask Greg Grant, because I think we have had this discussion in the past, and I think he told us whether we did or did not use glyphosate, and maybe we could just save a lot of time if we got that answer
If
from
it's,
him? Is
Mr.
that
Mayor, members
okay?
of council, if it's just a quick response from staff, very brief, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Greg? Excluding the trail, I don't know about the trail, but in the city of Ojai, do we use glyphosate?
We use a small amount. It's kind of an IPM approach. We're just use as minimal as possible. It's primarily when it's on the shoulders of roads and other areas that might damage, the roots get in and start breaking up intentionally compacted bases and so on. And I think there's been a little bit of correspondence on email. I think we were included with discussions with Patty Pageling and some others, and I know the county just went through something called Weed Zap. It's this, you might have noticed a clove oil cinnamon odor on the trails, and that was the material they purchased, is this material Weed Zap. So it's very expensive, close to $50 per gallon. And so they did a test case. They spent a few $1,000s on this Weed Zap, and they felt it wasn't successful. There's some debate on whether it was applied properly and so on. But it seems to be the more promising product that we're trying right now is it's agricultural vinegar. So it's about a 20% strength vinegar, and it's more like $18 per gallon. Still pretty pricey. But you apply this agricultural vinegar. The word is it can be very effective, but it's more of a burn on the plant than the glyphosate, which is more systemic and gets down and kills the roots. So we're going to actually do a few test plots and check the difference between the glyphosate versus the vinegar, see how they work.
And I know this is a public comment item, so I don't want to go too far into it. I would see if we could bring it up when we bring our goals, not to fully discuss it, but see what our option is and see if we could direct staff instead of holding an agenda, a whole separate item just on this subject.
Okay.
Next speaker's card is Susan Mierbach.
Good evening, Mayor Lara and council members. My name is Susan Mierbach, 1116 Golden West. Just want to tell you that a couple of years ago, my husband and I bought 3 of the 7 buildings in the Ojai Business Park from Ojai Community Bank. We love the buildings. They were fully tenanted when we got here, and a vast majority of those tenants would be fall into the classification of office, professional, and administrative, including lawyers and bookkeepers. Recently, 2 of our tenants, some of you know who they are, helped discover that these office buildings are not currently zoned for professional and administrative category, but more for office real estate. And I want to thank you for handling, getting a very speedy temporary solution for this. And I want to thank you in advance for coming up with and implementing a rational and ongoing permanent solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor
The
Lara,
member, Wyrick.
I think just for information purposes, you might want to know, I believe we have an upcoming schedule soon for introducing a more permanent fix to this.
Yeah, that's on April 1st at the Planning Commission.
So we're pushing it as fast as we can.
Very much.
Thank
Joni.
My name is Joni Blackster, and I am a 538 Palo Road. I am a local health coach, and I'm here as the Ventura Area chapter leader for the Weston Price Foundation, which is a nutrition education organization, as well as a co-founder of Soil Solutions Network, which is a project of transitions to organics. And what I would like to talk with you all about is the fact that now that the Asian citrus psyllid has been found in Ojai, it means that we are targeted for the state's program of aerial sprayings of pyrethrum pyrethroids, and also the neonicotinoid imidacloprid. Neonicotinoids you have probably heard of because they have been found in study after study to be lethal to bees. But what's important to keep in mind is that the latest research is showing that it really destroys an entire food chain, because it's not just bees, it is insects in general, which means also the bird population that eats those insects is affected, and so on it goes up the food chain. Personally, I'm concerned for my cats, because my cats go out and occasionally hunt birds, and they may be eating poisoned birds. So I would really like to encourage the council to follow in the footsteps of Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara was proactive about this in 2013, 14. At the end of 2013, the citrus psyllid was found in groves over there, and so they knew that they were going to be targeted for the spraying program. In anticipation of that, they put funds together, which I believe they pulled out of a certain hotel tax. And they used that to measure the content of the imidacloprid in their waterways, and that was in January of 2014. In February, the following month, the county went into their spraying program, and the neonicotinoid, by the way, is actually a soil drench as opposed to the pyrethrins and pyrethroids, which are aerially sprayed. And they were the levels for the imidacloprid were so high in that first pre-spraying program that they thought the lab had made a mistake. But they were scheduled only for once a year annual testing, and so they waited 11 months, did their next round of testing. It came out just as high. And this is in an area where the beekeepers did a very strong campaign to discourage homeowners to take an option that they had, which was to opt out. So I am particularly concerned as an Ojai resident because, as you know, since we live in a bowl, we have very few cross breezes. Santa Barbara has a big advantage over us because they have the constant sea breeze. So I would like the council to consider that we need to get our soil tested because the earth will be soaked with the imidacloprid. We would like to see our air tested because we will have aerial spraying. And then, of course, all of that, both the air and the soil drenching, then passes into the waterways so that our waterways should be tested as well. I'm happy to talk to anybody at any point if you would like more information.
Thank you. And I know that our list of priorities keeps going up, but again, could we just slash this with the whole spraying too, just to see if we could find some minimal information and see what if we could come up with recommendations from staff how to approach this. Otis Bradley.
It's regarding the transient rental.
Okay, so that's agenda size. I'll make that note. Deborah Moe.
Good evening, council. I am, the last time I came here, I talked about pesticides, Roundup, and it's been talked about already, but I just want to reiterate that there are, Arcata, Fairfax, there are counties in California that have gone strictly organic. Now that our water is depleted, the toxicity of the pesticides that go into the watershed are more prevalent. And as Greg said, that the clove stuff is more expensive. How expensive is cancer? And that's all I want to say on that one. I also want to address the 2-hour downtown parking that doesn't seem to be enforced. People can park there all day. I have been monitoring it, and only because I was a little chapped not too long ago because I couldn't find a parking place. I know that after 6 o'clock, you can park in the 15-minute parking in front of the post office. But is there any meter maids, any tickets going? I thought it was not comical, but there's a red line right in front of the post office, and a van had pulled in there to hurry up and get out and go mail a letter, and one of our local police cars that says police on the back, it wasn't a sheriff, just drove right on by. I mean, these are laws, and trust me, I have my issues as well. I'm not perfect, but I think it's a blatant disregard of some of the 2-hour parking signs. I don't know anybody that's ever gotten a ticket in downtown Ojai for parking, and I do know it happens. Anyway, the most important thing for me was about the water. The use of Roundup. I went off on my gardener today. His wife has cancer, and I asked him what he was spraying, and he told me Roundup. Anyway, it's important to me, and there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. And I do want to inform you that we just got a code enforcer officer, a compliance officer. So we will be looking to see where we direct them and see where staff is at, because we definitely want to start enforcing some of our codes on the municipal code book. Thank you. Anybody
Mayor
else?
Laura, I think
Yes.
Captain Kenny
Yes.
might want to comment.
Okay.
We do enforce the traffic laws. We have a new cadet at the station, and that's one of his primary functions, so he'll be out doing that, and he has been doing it.
Okay.
So we have been citing people.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Anybody else? Yes, Christine Gold.
Christine Golden. Okay, everybody. 1 gallon of vinegar, 2 cups of Epsom salts, a quarter cup of dish soap, ecologically friendly dish soap. Great. Weed killer. Did it all over my property this weekend. All the weeds are dead and gone. Want me to say it again? 1 gallon of vinegar, 2 cups of Epsom salts, quarter cup of dish soap, ecologically friendly dish soap. Try it. You'll like it.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak during public comment? No? With that, we're going to move on. Do I hear a motion, a consent calendar, or does anybody want to pull any items on the consent calendar? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent calendar items 1A through 1E.
For a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Aye.
Haney,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes. We're going to move on to our discussion items. The first item being the appointment to the Area Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. A recommendation to ratify the appointment of William Painter as the city's representative to the Area Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for a 4-year term ending March 8, 2009. And should we have a report, or do we just ask for?
I think that's sufficient. But by the way, our city clerk was ill today, and so Amber Young, my administrative assistant, is stepping in, which we appreciate. But I don't think she has a report.
Okay. Anybody on the council have any questions? Does anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to move on to any motion.
I'll move we appoint Mr. William Painter, accept the recommendation of the appointment of Mr. William Painter as the city's representative to the Area Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for a 4-year term ending March 8th, 2019.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes. And I decided just to recommend to reappoint Mr. William Painter. I think he's done a good job in the Area Housing Authority Board as our commissioner. And I've asked him if he could just come up and explain to this council of his duties and responsibilities so that not only we're reminded, but also the public knows what he does.
Thank you, Mayor Lara and council. I appreciate the vote of confidence. The Area Housing Authority is a public agency which provides housing assistance to low-income individuals in 7 jurisdictions, one of which is the city of Ojai. And the way it is managed, the way the Housing Authority is managed is through a management board called the Board of Commissioners. Each of the 7 jurisdictions designates 2 individuals to serve on the board. And the board basically hires an executive director and supervises an executive director, which runs the Housing Authority. The budget of the Housing Authority is something on the order of $33 million a year. Most of that, $28 million of that is housing assistance payments. They're in the city of Ojai. Well, let me back up and say the city of Ojai is, let's say, 7,500 people. And the area, the population served by the Area Housing Authority is something like 470,000 people. So Ojai is about 1.6% of people served by the Housing Authority. And we get a pretty good deal. We have about 4% of housing assistance payments, both in terms of dollars and households supported. We have something like, out of 355 public housing units, we have 100 at Whispering Oaks. So we have 20 some odd percent of public housing units. And we have 15 housing authority-owned apartments up at Summer and Signal and Grand. There are 2 buildings there with a total of 15 units that are reserved for, they're income qualified with lower rents.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that information, and I want to invite the council to see if they have any questions, or if not, then.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Haney.
Is the goal of the area housing to keep these individuals in these units, or to help them to establish themselves so that they can move on to something better and greater, and something new or someone new can move in behind them?
Well, it's the latter. And to try to achieve that, there are residential services where the objective is to try to achieve self-sufficiency.
Is there any records of how long individuals have actually stayed in these units, or
Well,
have
there
been assigned
undoubtedly
to a
are.
specific unit?
Sure, there are.
Okay.
It's as...
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you,
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Painter,
Thank
for willing to serve again on the commission.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Third item is the appointment to the Arts Commission. Ratify the appointment of Mark Lewis to serve on the Arts Commission for the term to end May 31st, 2016. And there was a commissioner's resignation submitted, Pamela Gra. And since it was a resignation, and we've had interview just recently, I looked through all the resumes, and I got to say, there was a lot of impressive just background on these applicants, and it was a difficult decision, but I decided to appoint Mark Lewis. So I guess if anybody on the councils has any questions regarding my recommendation, they could ask myself, or else I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll try this. I'll make the motion to ratify or approve Mark Lewis to serve on the Arts Commission for a term to end May 31st, 2016.
Second.
Roll call.
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Yes.
Yes.
Blatz,
Yes.
Lara,
Yes. And then is Mr. Lewis here? Yes, if you would like to step up, and I don't know if you want to comment or say anything.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for the honor, and to note that I'm actually a second-generation Arts Commission member. My mother is a local artist, Karen Lewis, and she served on the commission about 20 years ago, and I'm happy to be and proud to be carrying on the family tradition. So thank you for the honor.
Well, great.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Fourth item on the agenda, the appointment on the Building Appeals Board. Ratifying the appointment of Steve Quillisi to serve on the Building Appeals Board for a term ending in August 13, 2017. And again, we received a resignation letter from Ms. Hilgers. She will no longer be on the board. And since it was a resignation, I decided to also appoint somebody from our recent interview panel. And in my eyes, I think Mr. Quillisi has been patient and very qualified of serving on this Buildings Appeals Board. And again, if anybody has any questions of my recommendation, or I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to say I think it's a great nomination, and Mr. Quillisi brings I think he brings a calm and analytical mind to the Building Appeals Board, which is a good fit. And so I'm going to, with that, nominate him to serve on the Building Appeals Board for a term ending August 13th, 2017.
Here, a second.
Can I just make one quick statement? I too have actually watched Mr. Quillisi at city council meetings and at appeal boards meeting, at planning meetings, and again, I find him extremely qualified. However, What I would like to see on the appeals board in the future, if we can, is someone with a planning background, someone with a, what did I say earlier, Paul? Planning and,
Legal?
yeah, and a legal background. I'd like to see an attorney step up in the city of Ojai to be on on a future appeals board. It's a highly technical board, and I just think someone with a background in planning as well as in the legal side of what they're going to review would be important. So, but other than that, that's it.
Any other
I'll go to
comments?
your judgment there.
Or a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Aye.
Haney,
Aye.
Blatz.
Yes.
Aye.
Oh, Laura, my apologies.
It's okay. We got to mention, Miss Young is stepping in for our city clerk. Rhonda is out sick today, so we won't
Very
be
good
too
at
hard.
wearing many hats.
Yes, she is. And I just want to comment, just in general, I'm just very, again, impressed by the applicants submitting to be on these commissions and these boards, because I feel like we have the capacity here in the city to really find qualified individuals. So I just feel really lucky to be in the city. Item number 5, resolution approving the public notice procedures for proposed wireless telecommunication facilities. And I'll turn it over to staff for a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. When you adopted the ordinance regulating wireless telecommunications facilities, there were several provisions in it that called for development of a procedure for public notification that's different from the procedure normally used for other types of applications. And so we have put one together. We really were not able to find a model from another city, but I'll briefly outline what's contained in it. First of all, there's several types of things that will occur at every step, and that's posting on the city website and posting at City Hall. So all the way from the time that someone makes a site-specific inquiry through the time that there are hearings or other actions relating to the application, we will note those with the appropriate dates on the website and also on the City Hall. Secondly, we will have posted notices on the property, which is not something that we've done for other types of applications. So there'll actually be a sign posted on the property within 5 days after receiving an application, and then 10 days before a hearing before either the Planning Commission or the City Council, indicating the nature of the application and where to go for additional information. And then mailed notice, we've proposed expanding the radius from 300 feet to 500 feet, although you could take your choice on what the appropriate number of feet is. And those will occur, again, when there's a proposed ministerial action. And I should explain that. When there's a modification to an existing facility, we're obligated to approve it as long as it meets the criteria for a modification. And so that's an administrative process under the ordinance that we just adopted. So there is no public hearing on that matter. But we still will mail a notice and give people an opportunity to comment to the Director of Community Development, who ultimately will make that decision. And then we'll also do public notices of either conditional use permit hearings or design review hearings, either before Planning Commission or City Hall. So it's a pretty thorough, comprehensive notification process.
Do you have any questions from council?
I just have one question for Mr. Clark. The mailing of the notice is the responsibility of the applicant, correct? The cost?
The cost, yes.
Okay. Is there any prohibition that would keep us from being able to give notice to every single citizen in Ojai? I mean, I don't know why we couldn't require that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Blatz, or Mayor Pro Tem Blatz, are you speaking, certainly nothing prohibits staff at city expense from providing notice to everyone. If you're talking about compelling the applicant to pay that expense, that may be a bit extreme. I've seen requirements where the radius is 1,000 feet, for example, for new applications. And what the mailed notice that we're talking about here is for these essentially 6409A applications, co-location, and ones that don't expand beyond 10% or 20% of the size of the facility. It would be fairly extreme to ask them to bear the cost of that. They may challenge it. They may be successful.
Even if it was just, one of my concerns was that the public wouldn't receive notice early enough on, and that's being taken care of. But originally, our independent counsel indicated that notice would go out once the application had been approved. Now, at that point, that's when the notice would have to go out to the public under any circumstance, correct?
Not necessarily, unless there was a requirement to provide those. Remember, these are intended to be somewhat ministerial. If they meet the requirements for 6409A, I think that you're going to be falling in line with most cities by providing some kind of notice on the front end, even though there may be expectations that individuals or others can raise issues that may be considered by, whether it's a community development director or a planning commission, for example, when it really needs to be ministerial, because if they meet the requirements of 6409A, federal law provides that shall be approved and shall not be denied.
Okay. Well, my only thinking is that, and then again, I'm looking for public input and input from my colleagues, but I don't want us to cost the city a lot of money by giving all kinds of notice. But I don't think that if we're going to give notice 300 feet, 1,000 feet, this is something that doesn't just impact those people within a certain footage of where the tower is going to be installed, like, a variance or something might have an impact in a neighborhood. But a cell tower has impact on our entire community. And I think that if we're going to give a notice, at some point, notice to our entire citizenry should be given to let them know that somebody is doing this, because there may be people that live at one end of town that could be a mile away from where this installation is, yet might be impacted because they're up on Signal Street looking down over the entire valley and may have some input or at least they need to know about it. That's all I'm getting at. Yes.
One suggestion, under certain circumstances, we actually publish a notice in the newspaper, and we haven't put published notices in this yet, but we could publish the notices when there's a requirement for a mailing in the local newspaper, which would at least, I think that would notify a lot of people, and then they'd
Okay.
start yammering to their neighbors.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that a lot of notice goes out when these things are being contemplated. That's my main concern.
Anybody else in the council? Yes, Councilmember Haney?
I just wanted to touch on the administrative side of it. There's an administrative procedure where there is not noticing required. How are we going to notice that?
Let me try and explain that again. With a modification that meets certain criteria established by the federal government, there's no public hearing. But we are proposing that there be notice. So we would issue notice before the director takes action, and the type of input that they could take is, people might argue that it doesn't meet the definition of an expansion that's federally protected. So the notice would at least alert people to the fact that that's there and that they have an opportunity to make that kind of argument.
Okay.
So could I just go, my suggestion, based on Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Blatz's comment, is that in Section 3 of the procedure, which is 5 of 6 at the bottom, that we say mailed and published notice.
No, page 5-6.
Yes.
Anybody else on council have any questions before I turn it to public? No? I do have one speaker's card. Pete?
Thanks, Mayor Lara. Pete LaFalle at 999 East Ojai Avenue. The fact they're even having this conversation sounds like a deja vu of a real bad nightmare when we went over the item last time at Grand. I'm having a hard time taking this issue seriously, or having you taking this issue seriously given the huge, broad public rejection of those cell phone towers. And Mr. Blatz is the only one that's really cognizant, it seems to be, or speaking out, aware of the health and safety, established health and safety hazards of cell phone towers. So the rest of you, if you're not doing your homework or you're just not really caring very much about the process, you're accomplices in pushing a real negative project. And it really sounds like the way the city manager just worded it, it's going to be a fishing expedition to the highest bidder as far as the cell phone vendors. And also it sounds like there's no public hearing, but just a public comment, and that means no public process, and you know that's not the protocol at all. So you have a lot of reworking to do. You're going to hear from a lot of people, and as I said last time we went through this, if you really don't want a really embarrassing political publicity, you're going to do the research before you can start this discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public have any questions or wanting to comment on this item? No, hearing none. Yes.
I speak on my personal issue with.
Could you just state your name for the public?
My name is Linda Epstein Clark. I live at 520 Buckboard Avenue, Ojai. This is not referring to my particular issue. However, when you put notice in the paper, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't read it. It seems to be very small in point. It seems to be not highlighted, underlined, starred, asterisked. There's nothing about it that sets it apart from a fictitious name change of a business. So either I don't know how to find it, or it's buried somewhere, and I would like to know about notice issues, and I would like to know where I can find them without having magnifying glasses and 3 hours of time searching. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Now I'm going to turn it back to my colleagues, Mr. Wyrick, Councilmember Wyrick.
I just want to make a comment about the fact that in terms of vetting the current telecommunications ordinance that we adopted and this particular part of that ordinance, that the guiding principle, I think we need to restate to the public on this, is given the FCC rules, how could we craft something to provide the maximum amount of local regulation and discretion that was available to us? Just say no is not serving the public in this situation. We have to live within the parameters and do as much as we can to craft something that fits those parameters within the FCC rules. I think we've done this, and I think every member of this council has spent a lot of time looking at it from that perspective. And this was a follow-up, and I think it's important that Mayor Pro Tem Blatch's suggestion, the suggestion about how to make sure that these notices are as visible as possible, is extremely important, and that's what we're doing here. And also, I think the other point to make is that we are going to be ramping up in terms of posting on website and City Hall and on the property. So this is an improvement over what we've been doing.
Anybody else? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Blatz.
I want to comment on something that Councilman Wyrick just said, but on the notices that you're talking about, would they be on the back page along with all the legal notices, or would they be in the area of the newspaper where you post public hearings?
Well, they're normally, yeah, they're where public hearings are posted. It would be the same kind of notice.
Okay, it's not in the back where you have your probates and things like that?
No.
No, okay. So for the individual that talked about it, we don't post these things back where the fictitious business name statements and notices of estates being, submitted for probate and all that. Those kind of notices are on the back page, which are very difficult to read and you have to go through them. These are posted within the body of the newspaper in its own little, looks like an advertisement.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I just want to comment on is to make sure the public is clear that I don't want to, restate what Councilman Wyrick just said, but this is just another example of the state and federal law more and more every day dictating what we have to do. And in this community, we are, as everyone says, the real action of the people in their relationship with their elected officials, the place where that really happens is at the local level. And we should have control over our local level as much as we want it. But unfortunately, there's others in this world that believe that they know better than we do. And we're stuck with it. And it happens with the state when they tell us what our RENA numbers are, and it happens with the federal government, which more and more every day is insisting that they know what's better for our community than we do. So all we can do is craft ordinances around whatever we are obligated to do with them, making sure that we have the absolute maximum amount of control in an area which we have very little control in. And it's really important that everybody understand that, particularly after Pete's comment, because I believe Pete thought that we actually had some power in this area, and we really don't. But notice to the people so that it can get out, knowing what's going on is really important as far as I'm concerned with this. And I think that, as Councilman Wyrick said, we've done a really good job crafting this.
Anybody else from council? Yes, our city attorney, Mr. Howard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of quick closing points. One, I should note there is some litigation that has just been filed challenging the most recent iteration of the FCC interpretation and their rules relating to 6409A. Where that goes, we'll continue to track it, but that's years down the road. We'll see how successful they are in whole or in part and possibly setting those regulations aside, number one. Number two, I know the council was concerned that the ordinance, after it's adopted, you had some kind of noticing procedure in place for any applications that would come in. My recommendation tonight is, strictly from the legal side, is that you consider this with the amendment as the city manager suggested, and allow us to take a look and see if we can legally sustain a citywide noticing requirement. At least then you'll have this on the books, and if we need to bring it back because we find an opportunity to be able to provide more notice, we can provide you with that.
Thank you.
I just want to comment too, on top of that, our noticing procedures for this particular item has been more, I could say, broad or not broad. It makes a point of noticing a lot sooner than any other item. Because this is a mandate from the federal government that we need to approve. So we're trying to get the notice out to the public as soon as possible. And we're actually noticing people when they submit an application, not when an application is complete, which is a big difference. It's noticing you right away. My only comments on this, on noticing is, when we said post notice on the property, do we know what size the posting is going to be on that property?
We did not specify a size in the policy.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure again, to Ms. Epstein's comment, that they are clear and noticeable. And again, I know we use old templates probably about noticing and putting it on the paper, but if we need to modify that so it becomes a little bit more clear, I'm all about that. I just want to make sure that we update our procedures too, so that people could read them a lot easier, because with technology nowadays, we could use that. I'm always I'm posting on our city website. I know that a year ago when we were talking about updating our website, I was big on possibly doing social media too, and this is something that we could have used social media for. And again, it's kind of ironic because we're using technology and all this when we're trying to prohibit wireless towers in our community. So it's kind of a ironic situation. But again, other than that, I think that we've done a pretty good job at finding where we could alert the public, unless I have any other questions from our city council. No, if not, then do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to adopt by roll call vote of at least 4/5. Oh, pardon me. No stamps on the show.
This is not 4/5.
I'm in the wrong place.
Item number 5.
I adopt the resolution approving the public notice procedure for proposed wireless telecommunications facilities.
Including the amendment proposed by the city manager.
Yes, including the amendment proposed by the city manager.
Second.
Roll call.
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Aye.
Haney,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura,
Yes. Item number 6, text amendment TA 15-03, moratorium on the installation of fences, walls, hedges, and screening over 3 feet in height in certain locations on residentially zoned properties, and require a work permit for all fences within the Arbolada neighborhood. I'll turn it to staff.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I would like to note that there's some revised materials which we've placed out in the lobby and which you have copies of here on the dais. The council's had a couple different conversations about potential moratoriums on fences, walls, hedges, and screening, and has talked about the possibility of what might be done in the Arbolada neighborhood and also what might be done on a citywide basis. In crafting this particular version of a moratorium, we tried to keep the definition narrow and focus it on the concerns that the council raised during your discussions, rather than just broadly putting a moratorium on all walls, fences, and hedges and screening. So on a citywide basis, we've included and are recommending that the moratorium affect the installation or construction of any fence, wall, hedge, or screening in excess of 3 feet in height in the rear and side setbacks when the side setback is adjacent to a public, private street or driveway. So basically, the issue that seemed to be coming out of the discussion was corner lots. And there's been discussion about which side of a lot is the front and which side is the side. And clearly some controversy over whether side yards that are adjacent to a street should be allowed to have 6-foot walls. So we're applying the 3-foot standard for now on those corner lots. And then with respect to the Arbolada, there's actually a slight difference between the ordinance and the wording in the staff report. In the ordinance, which is what we'd recommend, for the Arbolada neighborhood, we're proposing a moratorium on all fences, walls, hedges, and screening, no matter how tall it is. However, we're providing a process whereby anybody who wants to install or erect or reconstruct one of those things can apply for a work permit through the Historical Preservation Commission. So the issue in the Arbolada, as we understand it, was the impact of these walls on the historic character of that particular neighborhood. And this allows someone who wants to protect their children or protect their animals or whatever to go forward, as long as they can demonstrate to the HPC that it's not degrading the historical character of that neighborhood. And if they want to, if the decision can be appealed to the city council as well. So you could hear an appeal of a decision of HPC on these. The definition of the Arbolada neighborhood was taken from the urban forest master plan. There's no really super precise definition, but that neighborhood was defined in that plan as being a neighborhood where there were a lot of older homes of potential historic value. And the change to the ordinance from what was originally in your agenda is to require that the HPC or the Council on Appeal actually make a finding indicating what the historic reason is for their decision. So that's kind of an overview, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Council Member Wyrick?
I assume we're going to open this up for public comment?
Yes. I'm first going to see if the council has any
I have a
questions or
question,
comments.
but I will have comments afterwards, for
Okay.
sure. what thought has been given to the fact that the Arbolata does not lie entirely within the city limits?
We're aware of that, and we're aware that we can't control the areas that are outside the city limits. So we're stuck with being able to control what's in the city limits.
And the other question I have is, in terms of singling out one neighborhood versus the whole city on this matter, how much input have you had from residents other than the initial discussion?
Really none. We haven't solicited input from the neighbors, and it's basically in reaction to concerns raised by the HPC.
Thank you.
Councilmember Haney?
Mr. Boy, sometimes I just get tongue-tied over here. Mr. Clark, I had the same question regarding, do we know how many number of homes that are going to be affected in the Arbolata? That'd be my first question. And then the same thing is, have we even contacted them to find out what their take is on this moratorium that's going to affect all of them? And then the third thing is, the Historical Preservation Commission already has an ordinance. They already have rules and regulations. They already have guidelines. It seems like if there's someone on a historical site that's deviated from that ordinance, that we have the right to go in and rectify that problem. So again, I'm a little confused on creating this moratorium in that specific area, one, without the neighborhood's input, and two, if there is an issue historically, that we already have something on the books that could correct that. So those are just my concerns, and I'd be open to hear what the public has to say about that.
Any other did you want to respond to some of the questions?
I guess a couple things. One is we do have a list of the affected homes in the original report, which is on 614 through 617. And just quickly looking at it, it looks like there's about 150 properties that would be affected. And again, this was something that was put together at the request of the city council, so we're responding to your request.
I remember, yes.
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, to quickly add, the current jurisdiction of the Historic Preservation Commission is to assess whether to issue a work permit for landmark properties. That's where their jurisdiction lies right now. If properties are not designated an official landmark, then they don't have any jurisdiction. This moratorium would give them authority to look at least fences in an area that is either not a historic district or does not have any landmark properties. We may have one or so, but it won't deal with the properties that are not landmark. Hence, the jurisdiction would be their jurisdiction would be increased to include more than just landmark properties.
Yeah. And I remember in our discussion, we didn't mention increasing their authority, which was my concern too, have we talked to our people that live in that area, and have we verified the addresses that are listed is another question I had. I don't know if they're verified or not.
So we did verify that the properties on the list correspond to the boundaries on the map. So the map that you have that shows that area, these are the properties that are within that area.
But the owners...
But we have not done any kind of public notice or outreach meetings or anything like that. So if you want us to do that, that would be something we'd have to do at a later time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one question. The title of this is a moratorium, and it's before us as a moratorium because of a urgency item. Is that correct? So that we are able to then develop the ordinance that we want to put into effect.
Yeah. So this is a 45-day urgency ordinance done specifically to study. It can be extended for another 10 and a half months. And the neighborhood planning process was the type of study that we defined as being the way we'd make decisions about the permanent solution.
Any other questions or comments before I turn it to public? No? I do have one speaker, Ramin Shamshir.
Good evening. My name is Ramin Shamshiri. I'm the property owner at 1000 Foothill Road, also known as the Libby House. My family and I have lived in the house now for just over 3 years, and I've had a residence in Ojai for 7 years. To describe the condition at our house, I would start by noting that the setback is extremely shallow. The house itself sits well within the 40-foot setback allowed for a barrier higher than 3 feet. Currently, we have no driveway gates and a deteriorating rubble wall that varies from 12 to 18 inches tall. Over the last 2 years, I've approached the HPC to try and come up with a solution that would allow us to have an enclosed backyard while having the least total impact on the historic nature of the buildings. My wife and I want to be able to open the back door to our house and not be concerned that our guests, small children, or pets will wander out onto Foothill Road. I've been in front of the HPC twice with various options, including a few that did not distract or obscure the street views of our house. I had them do a site visit and hoping they would better understand my predicament. I even went to the Planning Commission to inquire about my rights as a homeowner, as those rights seem vague and subjective at best. To summarize the feedback I've received, it would be highly unlikely that the HPC would approve a wall or gate of any kind or height on my property, but I can keep submitting options for review. While these are time-consuming and expensive, I did submit another option for review last November. It included a report from San Buenaventura Historical Consultants that indicated that my proposed enclosure conforms with the Secretary of Interior standards, the guidelines used by the HPC to review their cases. My understanding is that staff has been given a variety of directions on how to handle my case, and there's been some confusion about how to proceed. I've been waiting to get in front of the HPC for a third time now for 5 months, and I ask if this moratorium is approved tonight, that the projects that were already submitted be allowed to proceed forward for review. Additionally, I read the administrative report dated March 12th. I didn't see the corrections that you mentioned today. And I reviewed all the concerns about the safety of the vehicles, bikers, and pedestrians traveling through the Arbolada. But nowhere in the report does it mention the safety and well-being of the actual residents of the Arbolada. While some roads in the Arbolada do still have that open, rambling feeling noted in the report, Foothill Road bears little resemblance to the road that existed when our house was built in 1908. The same year that the Model T Ford came off the assembly line. Today, there is consistent traffic, and the posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour is not indicative of a residential road, nor is it adhered to, as cars continually drive by anywhere from 45 to 60 miles per hour downhill alongside mountain bikers racing down at 30 miles an hour. As noted in the report, there are no sidewalks, no parking, no lights, and the property lines are inches from where these vehicles and bicycles pass by. But all of the safety concerns in the report are for the vehicles traveling at high speeds and not the residents creeping out of their driveways confronting vehicles at highway speeds. If the expectation of the council is to have a sense of rambling openness, then you have to adjust the entire environment to create that setting. That would include enforcing any new wall standards retroactively so that unfenced properties like ours are not the minority on Foothill Road. Reduce and enforce the speed limit to 25 miles an hour, a standard for residential roads in California. Add more stop signs along the road and make sure they're enforced for both vehicles and bicycles. Add speed bumps to the road to ensure a decrease in the overall speed if enforcement is not feasible. None of these measures are addressed in the report. Our home is a historic property, and regardless of your decision today, we have to go through the HPC to approve a potential backyard enclosure. The Mills Act agreement notes, all requests for alterations or changes should be evaluated based on the total impact to the historic quality of the property and the need of owners to utilize the property as a residence. I would also note that as a landmark, about once a week, we get a group of strangers that drive onto our property trying to have a look around. We've asked them what they're looking for, and the answers range from a garage sale to a Vons supermarket. Per our Mills Act agreement, we are more than happy to provide scheduled tours of the property at any time, but it is not unreasonable to ask to have a driveway gate that would protect our family and guests from steady stream of tourists coming through to our backyard. As I've gone through this process, I do have a number of questions for council that are not all specific to my property. First, what rights do we legally have as historic landmark owners? Are they that much different than those of our neighbors in terms of our safety and privacy? Second, if I cannot enclose my backyard, and God forbid there's an accident with one of our guests or a trespasser is hurt when we are not at home, who bears that liability, me as a homeowner or the city of Ojai? That's a question that I'm sure would not come up a century ago when the Arbolada was created. My point is that we simply do not live in the same world that existed a century ago. We are in an era of accessibility, personal publicity, and the digital footprint. I'm not a proponent of 6-foot walls everywhere, but recognize that for many, a home is their only sanctum of privacy, and if residents want to obscure themselves from plain sight while in their home, isn't that a perfectly understandable craving given the world we live in today? Council should consider this in creating these new standards and offer a resolution that considers not only the passerby, but also the people using the home as a residence. Lastly, if you prevent people from continuing to screen their homes, this will undoubtedly have an adverse effect on the property values and in turn tax revenues. How would council address this fact with the existing homeowners? In closing, I ask that as you're developing this neighborhood planning project for all neighborhoods and not just the Arbolada, create guidelines that are clear and can be reviewed objectively, but still allow for some creativity moving forward. Having worked in the field for the past 20 years, design by committee is rarely a fruitful endeavor. Many of the great homes of the Arbolada were built by bold owners that came out west to explore the boundless freedoms that the area and culture afforded. They hired local visionary architects and gave them the liberty to create these landmarks that exist today, most of which could not be built given today's modern codes. Keep that in mind as you're adopting new codes. Don't homogenize the neighborhoods, but foster them to create new landmarks for the next century. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more speakers cards. Anybody else in public wishing to talk on this item?
I guess I do.
Yes. And could you please state your name for the record?
Thank you. It's Christine Bauer. I live at 616 Palomar Road. Thank you very much, Mr. Haney, for your concerns. I think it was really wrong for our neighborhood to not have been considered at all, especially considering that we have had some instances within the neighborhood where there have been such gross violations that dangers have been created. We have blind corners now. We have 5-foot setbacks where, what I came to understand, we always had a 45 to 50-foot wide road in the Arbolada. So there's this one thing goes, another thing doesn't, and now all of a sudden, all the animals are out of the barn and you guys are closing a gate. And none of us who are going to be affected by this have been notified that this is going on. I think this time a moratorium would be completely overstepping your hopefully good conscience. We're a very, very tight-knit neighborhood. We go in and out of each other's back doors. Most of us have lived there 20-plus years. We care very much on a personal level about the Arbolada. Given the nightmare scenario that I heard the gentleman speaking before me give about how long it took to go through the Historical Preservation Committee to do something that he needs to do for his home, now to turn over to the Historical Preservation Commission my non-historical home and fall prey to their schedules and things is wrong. And I urge you not to pass this moratorium tonight. I urge you to get involved with us as a neighborhood. We have a lot of input. We're fair-minded people. We'll give you our concerns. You're dealing with where I live on Palomar. I'm city. The people across the street from me are county. So this is the wrong time to say you're gonna saddle all of us with a moratorium, so that if I want to plant some hedges someplace or expand, or I personally have a fence that's falling down that needs to be repaired. I was planning on doing it. So now all of a sudden this moratorium is going to affect me. I'm not changing any, and now I'm going to have to go through, this. I just really would ask you that you would reconsider doing this moratorium right now, get a little bit more input from our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Yes, Mr. Quillisi.
Steve Quillisi, 516 West Eucalyptus. Mr. Mayor, council members, I would join the people that have spoken already in urging a couple of things. One, please do not give additional authority to the Historical Preservation Committee over things that no one has designated as historical. it's a difficult enough thing to get things passed through that organization, and I have nothing bad to say about any of the individuals or the existence of a historical preservation commission, but if you're going to give them authority over non-historical properties, but only in a certain neighborhood, that certainly sounds very discriminatory to me. If you're going to say that the Historical Preservation Commission now has authority over every piece of property in the city, it compounds the error, but at least it's fair, or it's equally unfair to all the residents of the city. And I've always kind of wondered who lived in the Libby House now. Nice to meet someone. I walk up and down Foothill from my house on West Eucalyptus, and I'm very nervous about the traffic in there. I can testify that 50 to 60 miles an hour is kind of standard through that area, and it is really a matter of public safety that some people be able to screen their yards and fence their yards along there. If you have other concerns about individual properties in the city, in the Arbolata, I can understand that. And if you want to set some kind of objective standard as to what constitutes a threat to public safety with visibility around corners and that sort of thing, I think that would be entirely fair as long as it's applied to the entire city. But if you're going to single out a neighborhood and only certain people within that neighborhood, and then give the Historical Preservation Commission authority over things that aren't historical, I think we have a multitude of errors here. I really appreciate the staff report on the subject, but I don't think that an emergency moratorium or any other moratorium is indicated here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? I'm going to turn it back to council. Any of the council member have? Yes, Council Member Wybrick.
I'd like to jump in here if, since everyone else is leaning back and I'm leaning forward. I think the problem with this proposal is that it has two things that are conflating, and that's because, and it makes it too broad, and I'm going to list them very quickly why. I think and I've spoken to this twice already, I think that we do have a problem with the definition of frontage in our code with respect to fences, hedges, and walls. And I think that does provide some justification for a moratorium to work out how to fix that problem. And I think that's a citywide problem, and I've stated this before. It's not a single neighborhood problem. It's a citywide problem, and I am somewhat open to the idea of saying, all right, we're not, in other words, Part A, in terms of the public rights-of-way and street-facing issue. On the Arbolata, I have the following objections. One, it doesn't apply to the entire neighborhood. So you have a disparate treatment even within the recognized neighborhood because of the way the city limits are. Number two, there's an implicit finding in this wording of this resolution designating it as an historic neighborhood without having a full public hearing due process on whether the neighborhood, what they feel about that designation. And I have been educated recently about the dangers of council engaged in any sort of implicit finding of this nature without really being very careful as to the implications. So I have a problem there. Number two, we have an enormous issue with staff time right now, and just think about every single HPC application would involve a staff time, staff report, then HPC review. I just think that it's by the principle of Occam's razor, one of my favorite principles. The problem is the frontage definition. Let's address the issue citywide, and let's not get into a conflated, expansive intricacy that doesn't focus on what the problem is. And I just really think that the point's well taken, that to have this fairly I don't think an urgency moratorium is the appropriate vehicle for a significant expansion of HPC authority and jurisdiction. That's done, should be done in a more appropriate and deliberative fashion. So in that respect, the only thing I would even consider voting for is Part A, forget Part B.
Page.
On attachment B, page 3 of 5, where it says the Section 4 temporary moratorium, there's a Part A and a Part B to it, and I'm just stating my position.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Yeah, I find some problems with the, with this as adopted, or as proposed as well. And along the same lines as Councilman Wyrick, but my thinking is we have a moratorium on something where we were going to request that work permits be issued by the HPC on something that right now doesn't even require a permit. You're putting a moratorium on the installation of fences where the city's never even been involved in that area before. And I know that we've cleaned that up a little bit with some legal language, which is good. But I see no reason to single out the Arbolada for any reason. If we're going to do something, we need to do it throughout the city. I don't think a moratorium is the way to go. I think that if we looked at the rules and regulations we have now as defenses, I think that if everybody followed those rules and regulations, we'd be fine. And if it's a historic designated property, well, then property, it has to go that way. But if it's not, it doesn't. It seems as though the problem is that people start putting up fences and they put them up wrong, or they install them without really knowing what they're doing, or they put them in the drip line of a tree when they can't, or they put it too high at a corner, or they call the frontage the side yard, or whatever that is. And it's because they are not paying attention, or they just are unaware of what the ordinance really is. And when you don't have any permits, that happens. So my idea would be to require a citywide, not necessarily a permit, but at least a sign-off. When somebody's going to be installing a fence, they have a checklist, and they have to at least come into City Hall without any other requirement than to check off of this checklist. Is it going to be 6 feet on a corner, and check it off? No. Is it going to affect the drip line of any tree? No. All the way down of those things that we think are important, get it signed off by somebody in planning, and then they can do their fence, as long as it's consistent with our current ordinance. But I think that's the thing to do, not a moratorium within the Arbolada. I think I absolutely see no benefit to approving this. I agree if we're going to approve anything as a moratorium, although I find it hard to have a moratorium on something that we've never required a permit for. I would much prefer to see staff adopt a checklist for people that are contemplating putting up a fence, to have for the homeowner to come in, check the thing off, get it signed off by Sherry, and build their fence, and everybody's fine with that.
Councilman Blatz, I have a question for you, just to clarify my primary concern, and that is that staff has defined frontage to mean that a very small amount of dimension facing a street is the frontage, and a large multiple going along a public right-of-way or a street, around the corner is not frontage.
Right.
And the contention of staff seems to be that that's built into the ordinance. We got a problem with the frontage definition.
Right.
And that's
would agree
really
with
my
you.
major concern.
Okay. And that's taken care of by this.
Right.
I believe. The language of this proposal, I think staff's done a good job with what is defined as where you have a problem with a fence, if there's a driveway and that kind of thing.
Right.
I think it gets, so if nothing else, that should be, hopefully we could put that into an overall ordinance to define frontage. But as far as having I think everybody should come into City Hall and do a checklist and have it signed off. That way we know that at least they knew they needed to come in here. So if a fence is installed and it's installed wrong, they can never say they came in. They can say, well, I didn't know it was wrong, because who knows whether they knew it was wrong or not. So that would be my preference.
Any other council comments? Now, I do want to Yes, Councilmember Clapp.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good discussion about, I'm getting more clear on my position on this, but I do want to make one delineation between Mr. Shamshiri's situation and the Arbolada situation. There is a difference in that we're dealing with a Mills Act property here. So I think that is another situation that does, it is appropriate to have at an HPC.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I just want to make that
Right.
clear, that that is an appropriate venue for what he's
I'm
struggling
not
with right
suggesting
now.
in any way that HPC not be involved in those properties
know.
in which they have jurisdiction
Yes,
over.
I
No,
agree
absolutely.
that you aren't saying that.
Yeah.
I do want to comment, this was brought up again in February 24th. I believe you weren't here at that meeting, or were you?
Yeah.
You were?
I just mentioned March 10th.
March 10th. So I guess it was Councilmember Clapp that wasn't, one of you were gone the meeting. So I do want to, and the reason why I'm remembering the meetings is because when this item was brought up then, I remember that council as a whole was pretty clear that if we're going to put a moratorium on this, it made sense to put a moratorium on the whole city limits, just for the reasons of defining frontage and letting the process of neighborhood planning proceed with and having public input in these situations. That was the whole consensus that I got. That's why, again, I was pretty surprised too when I started reading. You did a good job at least identifying most of the complaints, which was great. It is on the public right of way. It is the frontage. I agree that we could be more specific. But when in regards to giving historical preservation more ability to say in an implied historic district. I know they've mentioned doing districts around the city, but we haven't talked about it. So I think that we can't get ahead of ourselves. We have to think straight. I would too be in favor of if we are going to put a moratorium, putting on the whole city just to identify and make clear of our frontage issue. How we go about it, I'm not sure if I'm convinced creating the checklist. Again, I think of public outreach and I'd go back to our website, go back to social media, getting people involved, getting people to voice their opinion. I would love to have more public opinion during this neighborhood planning, and that's where I think we could tackle this situation is through that process, and we could clarify rights. Safety, all those issues, and just have a better crafted ordinance when it comes to fences, hedges, walls, etc. I would be in support of putting the moratorium until we get more public input. I just don't think that I could support anything else other than that, just for the principle of just making sure we do, but we do complete and we do follow through with neighborhood planning. If that's the goal and the objective, I think I could support that. But other comments? Any other comments from council?
Yes. My concern with the neighborhood planning is that is not going to be done for quite a while. Urgency moratorium is good for 45 days, and then you can extend it for 10 months, I believe. And that's going to be a long time for a moratorium to just establish our questions about side lot, frontage, etc. Maybe if it's a moratorium with a drop dead of 45 days and that question gets solved without having to be part of the neighborhood planning process. Does that make sense? Did I make any sense?
Mr. Howard and
Mr. Mayor, members of council, rather than locking yourself into a drop-dead date with a moratorium, you can terminate a moratorium anytime. If you complete studies for a particular neighborhood that's affected by a moratorium, you can change that. at any time prior to either the initial expiration or the expiration of an extended moratorium, can be extended twice, up to a total of 2 years. You can change that and eliminate it at any time. I would hesitate to lock yourselves into a specific date that may be unrealistic. Again, if you're even assuming that you might be interested in a moratorium.
I just want to remind the council too, is that we did talk about this February 24th, and I think we were having a consensus, all fairness to staff, in coming up with the moratorium, not this specific language, but in the sense, we did have consensus that we thought it was a good idea to have the moratorium citywide. And then I do also believe that at that meeting, we did bring up the county, and it would be great to include him in under the Arbolada neighborhood, because that's the only one that makes sense to me to include him and see if they're open to working with us. I would, if my colleagues agree, I would urge to direct staff in that direction. Councilmember Haney?
I just wanted to go back to this Mills Act property. I'm not 100% sure on the procedures in the HPC regarding a request and then not getting a response, but it sure seems like 2 applications and 5 months later I haven't got a response is too long. So I think that someone needs to look into that, and I'm sure that's Mr. Clark could probably do that for you. But that just seems way too long. And then the second thing, I just wanted to touch on again, giving the HPC too much regulatory power. It seems like we have a planning commission. It seems like if we wanted to subject anyone to some type of a permit or approval, that we already have a department set up for that for non-historical sites. So I definitely would not be in favor of something like that. And again, instead of a moratorium, and Mr. Clark, I want to thank you for this and the time you spent on this. And again, you reacted to what we were reacting to. And I think the reaction is, over the years, we've had walls built on public property without permits, and we've done nothing about it. We've had 6-foot walls built on private property, but have impacted neighborhoods, which the neighbors are a little concerned with. So we have a lot of issues here. So instead of just jumping in and trying to put them all out like they're burning us all, let's take a step back and let's review the setbacks. Let's review what are side lots, what are frontage, and let's do that properly. And let's do it through the proper venue, which would be through the planning department, and having public input and public support in any of these issues that we're going to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Clapp.
Mr. Haney, would you be interested in making that into a motion? You've got a second.
I've got another question first. Or you can
make the motion, I can second.
Make the motion, and then I can discuss it. Go ahead if you want to. Okay. I had a question for Mr. Howard. What effect would this have on any requested fences that are in the pipeline tonight?
They would be, unless you exempted them, they're not vested, they would be trapped by essentially, they would be swept into the moratorium.
Okay.
Again, with that exception that if it's in the Arbolada, they can seek a work permit from the Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay. So wouldn't this, assuming, I get the feeling that we're going to request a moratorium that's citywide. Wouldn't it be a moratorium, a citywide moratorium on fences, which at this point do not require a permit?
That's correct.
And any fences that would require a permit, they would just take their normal course if we make that an exemption?
That is correct.
Okay.
If fences that require a permit are those that are going to be either over height, which requires probably a variance, and you need a standards variance for it.
Right.
Or if there's some other provisions in the code in a particular area where they were either allowed by CUP or zoning clearance.
Or in a case of historically designated property, something that would have to go before the HPC.
Pursuant to the code or their landmark agreement under the
Okay,
Mills Act.
the
yes.
landmark. So I guess that my preference would be if Mr. Haney's going to make a motion with regard to a citywide moratorium, that we exempt those we make the moratorium on all fences that at the current time do not require any permitting, and exempt any and all fencing that are currently being proposed that do require permitting or some sort of oversight process.
Okay. I do want to ask, do we have any more comments from public? No? Okay. I'll entertain a motion if we're ready.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think I was making a motion on a moratorium. I think I was doing it just the opposite. I think my perception of my words were that we not have this moratorium and that we do not pass anything tonight, and that what we do is we send this back to planning and we have them conduct some public hearings, and specifically one for the Arbolata, but more importantly, one for citywide. And that we do get some input from the citizens of Ojai regarding fences and the issues that we're having and the issues that they might be having. The other thing too is that I think we have to recognize, we haven't had in the past any form of enforcement. And we do now. And I think that's another one of the reasons why we have hedges in front of properties 6 feet tall, and we have hedges growing into public right-of-ways, as well as walls that are being constructed under 32 inches or under 36 inches in the frontage of people's properties. So, again, my take on this was take a step back, send it back to planning, thank Mr. Clark for all the work that he's done, but let's revisit this and set a date to revisit it and have this discussion one more time.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember
Within
Clark.
your original conversation, you also stated, also have planning to help define frontage and side, et cetera, as well. Because that seems to be where the big hang-up is as well, particularly with the very long side lots that are along a public right-of-way.
Okay. Is that a conversation or is that a motion?
Or is that direction?
Or is that direction?
I believe that's direction.
Direction. I just have concerns with that. I understand where you're coming from, and I definitely agree with taking a step back. I agree with that. I just think that we are in the process of neighborhood planning. And to me, neighborhood planning is discussing frontage, which includes hedges, walls, fences, specifically what we're talking about here. And to me, to send it back to planning commission, but then we have here neighborhood planning consultants working on the same issue and taking public comment. And to me, it seems too convoluted. I know we do need to take a step back. I definitely agree with that. And the best approach, I would think, would be since we've had this issue, this has been an ongoing issue, let's just put a stop to it. Let's really support neighborhood planning. Let's let them get public input. I mean, the public input today was great to hear. And let's see if we could reach out to the county and let's get this, in my opinion, resolved and not create more steps. That's and more confusion. I just want there to be a policy, and now that we have a code enforcing compliance officer, we could actually enforce a moratorium. We could look at it in 45 days and see if it's working for us. If it is, then we'll extend it to 10 months. If it's not, then we'll and if we've had enough public comment, then we could remove it. It's like Mr. Howard said, it's not a permanent moratorium. We could remove it whenever we want. So that would be my position. And if nobody's ready to make a motion, then I will. Councilmember.
Can I get a clarification?
Yes.
Laura? Are you suggesting going ahead with this moratorium as written, or with the Part B with respect to the Arbolata deleted and just referring to the 3-foot maximum? Anything over 3 foot maximum?
Anything over 3 foot.
So with the Arbolata part?
Yeah, it's citywide.
Okay.
Citywide.
Okay.
Any other comments? No? Then I'll propose to adopt by roll call vote of at least 4/5 an urgency ordinance declaring a moratorium on installation of fences, walls, hedges, and screening in the whole city limits. I guess I need to make reference of attachment B on
Say in accordance with section 4A.
with section 4A only, yes. Mr. Howard?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, since you would be considering the adoption of an ordinance, and you cannot leave to the discretion of staff to sort of fill in the blanks and modify language, let me give you some precise language that you can consider. And again, I'm not advocating this should pass or fail, but consistent with your motion. One, the title of the ordinance should end with the phrase residential lots. You delete the phrase "and requiring a work permit for the installation of any fence, wall, hedge, and screening within the Arbolata neighborhood." That would be deleted. Section 1 findings A and B can remain as written. Section C should be deleted. Section D should remain as written with a period after the word screening on line 3. Delete the language "including special standards for the Arbolata neighborhood." On page 2, delete paragraph F in its entirety. That's essentially a finding to support the moratorium in the Arbolata neighborhood. On page 3 of 5, section 4, delete paragraph B in its entirety. And that again refers to the work permit for fences within the hedges, et cetera, within the Arbolata. And the rest of the ordinance can remain as drafted. Essentially, in summary, what I've provided is an ordinance which would, I think, accomplish, Mr. Mayor, your goals and perhaps others, to limit fences to 3 feet, whether it's a front setback, side setback, or rear setback, citywide.
Perfect.
For 45 days.
For
For 45 days, and a report will come back to you with, and a notice of public hearing prior to that period of time to possibly extend it. And again, if you choose to extend it, you can do so. If you choose not to, consistent with the government code, there'll be the appropriate update on what planning measures have been taking place.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard.
So I think we need to look more closely at the language of 4A. My intent in drafting that was only to affect the front yard and side yard or backyard when it's adjacent to a public or private street or alley. So if it's not, you could go ahead and do a 6-foot.
Well, yeah, that's my intent.
So that's your intent to do that too, right? So we could talk about it in neighborhood planning and, yeah. Okay. Well, then if it's okay with the council, then I'll just go with the amended proposal on the drafted ordinance directed by Mr. Howard. And I would entertain a second.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Roll call.
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Yes.
Haney,
No.
Blatz,
Yes.
Lara.
Yes. And I would invite the public to let us know your thoughts as soon as possible, and we'll revisit it in 45 days.
So Mr. Mayor, because 45 days falls between council meetings, actually this will come back up on April 28th.
Okay, perfect. April 28th.
And I should point out that if for any reason this 45 days expires either by error or intentionally, we cannot enact another moratorium unless you have an entirely different set of facts to support it.
Okay, great. Item number 7, the Livy Park Playground Equipment and Shade Structure. I'll defer to staff for staff report.
Mr. Grant will be presenting the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. On January 27th, the council authorized the city manager to request proposals for the community design build approach for Libby Park Playground. The city received 5 proposals from that RFP that went out, and the Parks and Recreation Committee, the Facilities Committee of the Parks and Rec Commission, met twice to review those proposals, and they recommended two companies as highly qualified, and those firms were Play by Design and Leathers Associates. The Parks and Recreation Commission reviewed those proposals and input on their March 6th meeting, and they unanimously recommended Play by Design to the City Council for your acceptance tonight to award a contract. As a review of the contract scope and the process for this contract, the first step is a design where the consultant goes out and gathers ideas from the kids in the community for a good portion of a day, and they go back and do a full schematic concept design of the project, and they also get feedback and create final construction plans thereafter back at their offices. So it's kind of a one-day design out here at the City of Ojai. They come the night before, they get all the community input, and then they review it with the community at nighttime to get a basic concept of what the plans would be. Then they go back to their offices, which unfortunately on the East Coast is a little expensive for travel, and they go through several iterations of design, feeding it back to the community here. Well, there'll be a steering committee in place that would review the design to make sure it's what the community's looking for. And that includes all the project management to make sure that we get ourselves set with various coordinating and steering committee measures like were listed in the administrative report, general coordinating, fundraising, public relations, volunteers, tools, food, materials, child care, and special needs are all part of coordinating a project like this. During the construction, that's a major part of the cost. They would have two consultants supervising and managing the work here at the site, and it would be approximately a 6-day project. That's what's assumed for this kind of budget range that we're in. If we somehow came up with a more complicated design or otherwise, it would vary based on a prorated portion of that task if it was more days or less days. Of course, no additional cost for transportation and so on. I should mention this has already got a great deal of support. I think there were some nice articles in the paper, as well as we've been contacted. We'd originally contacted the Lions Club. I think everybody will recall that it was very supportive of the project. I think that was key to make sure this goes forward because it's a big construction effort on the day of the build, or I'm sorry, the week or two of the build. So the Lions Club is a key group for that. They're the ones who are kind of the hands-on organization in the valley. So they're very supportive and looking forward to this as a volunteer project for them this upcoming fall. And Rotary Ojai West has also stepped in and was donating initially a shade structure, but now because of this custom community design build, they've changed their donation, want to donate $17,000 in cash towards the project. And then the Optimist Club has also contacted us and would like to support it as well. So that's a good sign. The schedule includes the outreach and the rough design before school ends. Want to grab those kids before they're out for the summer. And then the design would occur in the early summer, June and July, with possible iterations going into August. And then we'd plan to do the construction in October, possibly November. We're floating in between those, looking for after Ojai Day. And there is intention right now, before we even get started on review design, presuming that the council supports moving forward with this contract, to reach out to the Parks and Recreation Commission further, as well as the Historic Preservation, the Arts, and the Planning Commissions, to see what kind of input we might have on various features of the design. For instance, the height has been one of the primary concerns as far as the mass and other parts, it being in the Libby downtown core area. So that's the basic concept, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Blatz.
Hi, I just want to add that I'm a member of Ojai Rotary West, and we also are hands-on, even though in this particular situation, we were going to provide shade, and instead we're going to provide some funding. But we are also a hands-on type of a service organization that works on local projects, such as we've done cleanup at the cemetery, and we take care of the maintenance at the Ojai entrance park, the Ojai Rotary Park. And our new president that will come in June, Dr. Bill Schaus, is very much interested in looking at local projects that we can participate in hands-on. So as far as Ojai Rotary West, I think that contact should be made with us as well as with the other Rotary Club, because I think that you'll find that there'll be actual people hands-on willing to contribute in addition to what the Lions Club is pledging to do.
Okay.
Okay.
So in other words, we could expect Mayor Pro Tem Blatz there working hard too.
Yeah. Mayor Lara?
Yes, Councilmember Wyrick.
First of all, I stated before, and I'll state again, I love the concept, I love the approach, I'm very supportive, but I'd be remiss in my oversight role if I didn't ask the following question. At the January 27th meeting where we authorized soliciting proposals, the report said it would be approximately $30,000 in contract services for the design build and roughly 10% of the total cost, in other words, the rough ratio of soft costs. This proposal is $41,800 with a 15% automatic override possible by the city manager, which brings it to $48,070. That's 60% more than what was presented to us as an expectation on January 27th. And if the amendment was exercised, that raises the soft costs from 10 to 16%, which is getting a little high for a $300,000 project. I just wanted to ask the question, what's happening here in terms of, did the RFP ask for more services than was perhaps really understood? I just think it's important that we ask the question of why the soft costs went up so dramatically from the initial expectation.
Yes, I think the primary reason for that is for one thing, the two consultants that really had the highest ranking are very strongly related, let's say. They both are in a very small upstate New York town of Ithaca, where Cornell University is at, and it seems like a big part of the original Leathers and Associates group broke off and formed this play-by-design group. So they both seem to have very similar approaches throughout it. And one of the things that appears common for them is to have these projects supported by volunteer efforts. And those volunteer efforts seem to include practically all of the travel time and hotel pickup at the airport, staying overnight at volunteers' homes and all that kind of thing. So that is the most substantial increase. Really, the proposals were both, I think, came in at $34,000 and change. So that's much closer to that 10%, still higher than expected. And the travel is what I had nailed down after looking at the proposals, because it was a little bit loose on what that was. And that's where, when you look at travel costs coming over from that part, and presuming we're still going to use hotels and rental cars and so on, that's what brought the price up primarily. There still is an opportunity, I should mention, that we'll hopefully get volunteer efforts for things like guest homes and so on that will reduce the cost, but that is what will cover the, presumably cover the whole thing.
It's primarily the reimbursables that are driving it up?
Right.
Over to that, from 10 to 16%. Okay.
Any other questions from council? I do have a question. Wow, it's got loud all of a sudden. Hello? Oh, that's so loud. I'll just try to stay away from the mic a little bit more. But I know that this consulting firm is going to go out, is going to go get input from the school, local school, from the community, and have them essentially design this playground. My only comment is that we keep it with accordance to the rest of Levy Bowl. I know I'm a big believer in thinking and brainstorming and not shooting down every suggestion, but at the same time, I also think it's important for us to keep in mind that we want it to fit in with the rest of the Levy Bowl. So I don't want, I personally, and I don't know what my other colleagues think about this, I just want to keep that in back of our mind and just make sure that it makes sense throughout the whole Levy Bowl, and we don't add a huge playground that just this makes the Levy Park just formed in a weird way. So but again, I'm open to ideas, to brainstorms. I just want to make sure that we keep true to our values here. So, any other comments?
Mayor, Greg, I wish that all the Recreation and Parks Commission was standing next to you, because this is something that they've been thinking about for 3 or 4 years, and to actually see it come to fruition today is just incredible. And I think also because there's going to be public input and a public day, that Mayor, I believe that the citizens of Ojai are really going to build their dream and what they dream to fit into Libby Bowl. So that I don't have a concern with that, but I do hear your concern. I say let's go for it. Let's do it, and let's get this thing built. I think it's just going to be an incredible environment and an incredible opportunity for this community.
I hear another volunteer there too. So.
Oh, and yeah, and I will do that. One, I do have a guest room, and I will that I don't rent out. And we do have that, and I will offer that, and also Haney Landscape will actually volunteer for part of that build.
Okay, I'll write you down on that one.
Any other comments or motion? You want to do a motion?
You should make the motion.
I will be there, and I will highly encourage my employees to participate. So. Did I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to authorize the city manager to execute a services agreement with Play by Design LLC for an amount not to exceed $41,800 for a community design build for the Libby Park Playground, and I would like these to be 2 separate motions, if I may.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Clapp,
Yes.
Wyrick,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Lara,
Yes. Do I hear a motion for the second recommendation or more discussion?
I'll make a recommendation to authorize the city manager to amend the services agreement by up to 15% of the agreement amount if necessary.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Clapp,
No.
Wyrick,
No.
Haney,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Lara,
Yes.
Could I add a quick note to that is just that
Yeah.
we really don't, the only main reason, as I mentioned, we expect to exceed that would be because we come out with a complex project, the number of days is more than 6. We don't expect it otherwise. Sorry.
Well, great. Thank you, Greg. I'm excited to go out and work. Item number 8, discussion, discuss the process of reviewing responses to the city attorney request for proposal. I'll defer to staff for the report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. As you recall, you intentionally held off on deciding what the process was going to be for reviewing proposals until we saw how many they were and had a chance to circulate them. But the proposals were due on March 16th. We received 11 proposals from 10 firms and 1 individual. And we now need to decide how to go about screening and determining which ones to invite for interviews. I do note here that we have a closed session notice for this evening, and this is a matter that can be discussed in closed session. But since we hadn't decided whether we're going to do that or not, it's here available to discuss it now as well.
Mr. Mayor, I'd prefer to discuss it in open session.
Okay. With that,
I agree.
any further questions for staff or any discussion?
One thought that just occurred to me, when it says a possible next step is to determine which of the respondents of the city council would like to invite for a personal interview. I'm wondering if an additional step might be any additional questions that any of us have upon reading the proposals to submit for answers. I don't know if that is
Sure.
a normal type of procedure. I started reading them. I haven't finished. But questions might arise, and I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to have a set time period for us, if we have additional questions to submit, to get those from the respondents before we decide who to interview. thought.
I agree with that extra step. I also have concern because we have so much on our priority list that I actually was thinking about putting this off a little, just because we have so many projects already on our list, and I don't know what the council feels about it. I know we did an RFP about, and we apparently there's a lot of interest in for our city manager or our city attorney position, and I don't know what the rest of the council feels like. I just think that this is going to take a good amount of time, but then again, it is, I think, going to be most of the work is going to be done among us, and just keeping Mr. Clark informed of the process. But again, I don't know what the rest of the council feels about delaying it or adding that extra step.
Well, real quickly, I read all of mine. And I have already made 2 piles of the 6 or 7 I'd like to submit to the committee, and the 4 or 5 that I've decided not to. But if we're going to go another route, that's fine too. I'm open to anything. I thought initially we were going to select 1, 2, or 3 of us to actually review the majority of these applications, and then come back with some lists of the 5 or 6 or 7 that they thought were the most appropriate, and then conduct some type of an interview. That was my take. But again, I'm just throwing that out there.
Any other?
I like Mr. Wyrick's suggestion of 2 to 3 questions max, and then after they're answered, each council member submit. I guess we need to decide the maximum number we want to interview, or who we would like to interview, and go from there. I think everyone should participate in the choice of who gets interviewed.
Okay. So we are moving on with the proposal. I'm hearing a consensus.
Yes.
That they don't.
Do we want to set a date for each of us to get put our questions in, get responses, and all of us to catch up with Councilman Haney?
So
Now-
let me ask, are you talking about submitting questions individually to the applicants, or submitting the questions to the mayor so that all the same questions are sent to all the applicants?
I don't care. Either way.
I would suggest that each of you put together your questions and submit them to the mayor, and then we can compile that into a letter that we'll send to all 11 applicants and get them to all answer the same questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And why don't we impose a week on ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's good.
How does
That's
that
fair.
sound?
And that way you can eliminate redundant questions.
Yeah. So we'll put a deadline of 1 week on ourselves, and then go on from there.
Okay. Any other points, requests?
I know that this will involve perhaps expending some funds, but I personally would like to have Mr. Howard's input on the proposals. Mr. Howard is an experienced city attorney. He knows a number of these firms that I am sure have made proposals to us. I know a lot of the firms. I just went through an interviewing process for a new district attorney, meaning district attorney because it's a transit district, for Gold Coast Transit. And there's a number of the people that have responded to us that had responded to them, and I have recently conducted interviews on some of them. So I'm far more familiar with it, but I think that Mr. Howard, from a long and experienced city attorney, would be able to provide with some input with regard to those applicants.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, Mayor Lara, members of the council, well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I need to respectfully decline. My firm has submitted a proposal.
Oh,
and
okay.
So ethically,
Okay, I didn't realize that.
That's what I thought.
Hence you saw me move my chair
Yeah,
back against the wall.
no, I didn't, I thought that specifically that your firm, now does that mean you and your firm?
It means, I really don't want to get into it at all, other than to say that my firm has submitted a proposal. So I really.
Okay, because it was my understanding.
Line that I
Okay,
can't
well,
cross and-
okay, well, I can appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
It-
Thank you.
Because it was my understanding that, through Mr. Fletcher, that you or nor your firm was interested in continuing beyond the interim city manager. Has that changed, or was it never that way?
The firm has submitted a proposal.
Okay.
And I don't intend, Mr. Mayor, members of council, to be
It's a
cagey.
lawyer,
It's a strong ethical concern for me to be
I
involved.
understand, okay.
Mr. Howard, you don't have to be cagey. You should have just said, of course, I'd like to sit in upon those.
Well, if there's no discussion, since we're having this in public forum, we could ask for public input.
Okay.
Anybody wishing to talk on this item? No, seeing no hands, and I think we have a consensus that in 1 week we'll submit questions regarding the applications, and then I will compile them and send it over to our city manager so that he could format them. And then we'll I guess we'll bring it up next council meeting or the following.
So once you've compiled the questions, we'll just go ahead and send a letter to all of the applicants, and we'll give them a reasonable amount of time to respond. So it probably won't be the next meeting. It'll probably be the meeting after that.
Okay, perfect. Item number 9 is a moratorium on the issuance of conditional use permits for transient rentals in residential zones. I'll defer to staff for the report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This was actually requested by Council Members Clapp and Wyrick. As you recall, at the last council meeting, the council voted to set a date by which staff would begin enforcing current regulations as they relate to transient rentals. And following that, we did get inquiries from individuals who have illegal transient rentals asking about the conditional use permit process. And so there was a concern that people might start making applications and seeking conditional use permits before the city council decided what the rules of the game are. So this moratorium was added as an urgency item to the agenda. Again, it requires a 4/5 vote of the city council. It would be in effect for 45 days. So if you adopt it tonight, we would be back on April 28th discussing a potential extension of it. The enforcement date that you established turns out to be June 8th. So after June 8th, we will begin taking enforcement actions, and I think that's triggered this interest.
Any other further comments?
I have a comment.
Councilmember
I have a
Wyrick.
question.
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Where in the city currently are transient rental units permitted with a conditional use permit?
So in the zoning code, there's a table that lists the uses that are permitted in the zone or not permitted. And in the case of residential zones, transient rentals are neither listed as permitted or not permitted. But under a different section of the code, the Planning Commission can approve a use by conditional use permit if they make a determination that it's no more detrimental than the uses that are permitted. So under that provision of the code, transient rentals could be permitted in any residential zone.
Okay, and that's not specific, that part of the ordinance is not specific to the transient rental, it could be any activity.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right,
All
exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Wyrick.
And Mayor Pro Tem Blatz, one of the reasons that I felt this was important to do, again, has to do with staff time. We'll have Councilman Clapp and I, when we give the council member reports, we'll give an update on the progress and our proposal of where we hope to be going, hopefully soon to a workshop to get more input on this from the community. But the last thing we want is an avalanche of CUP applications to staff that may not be in compliance or at all in parallel with where we might be going on regulations. And the other comment I want to make is I have looked at a lot of the ordinances that have been recently adopted in many other cities around the state that have regulated short-term rentals, and almost all of them are not CUPs. They don't, because that runs with the land. They're almost all temporary use permits, annual renewals. And so that's another reason why I thought this was important.
Okay. And I want to thank both of you for your efforts with that regard.
Any other comments? I just think it's good policy, considering what we're trying to accomplish. It makes sense. Then again, I was thinking about CUP process and what it would take, but it just makes sense that it's good policy, and I think that it's a fair request. So with that, then I'll take public comment. I do have a speaker called Otis Bradley.
Good evening, and thank you, Council. My name is Otis Bradley. I live on Signal Street. I rent my house out approximately 10 times a year. And what that means is the house is empty more than it's rented. So in effect, it actually has less use, less traffic, taxes the city services less than it would if it were a full-time rental. I wanted to comment that, at least in my case, it's my home. It's a big investment of mine, and I'm extremely concerned about anybody that I rent the house to. Typically, I have several conversations with those people, and when they stay at the house, I manage it, I oversee it, and I'm very concerned that there's no damage or any problems with my neighbors. I think short-term rentals provide a good service in Ojai. As a matter of fact, 4 families who've rented my house have gone on to buy houses in Ojai, and all of them send their children to Ojai schools, where we know we need children. This is a new economy possible through the internet, and the internet also allows many people to do other types of business from their homes. Are we going to regulate all these people as well? Isn't it an owner's right to be able to rent their house out? Many cities, such as Santa Barbara and Malibu, have simple systems where people can register their properties and then pay fees for this TOT, or whatever you call it, tax. Why not proceed down this path? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wanting to speak on this item? No, I'll turn it back to staff. And any comments? Or turn it back to council, sorry. And I do agree that there are some good arguments, and I definitely think that that's what we're trying to get accomplished here. But at the same time, I think it is good policy to just put moratorium and let us have public input just like you did. And I'm sure our council member Clapp and council member Wyrick will take that into consideration and develop some data and input for the rest of us to consider what we're going to do. It doesn't mean that we're going to not allow them. It doesn't mean that we are going to allow them. It's just we're trying to figure out what's best for our community.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to comment with regard to the last speaker, and I'm not going to ask him directly, but it doesn't have any effect on the last speaker, who apparently is renting out his property now. What this moratorium is on issuance of new CUPs, which are required by our code in order to operate. So if the last speaker's operating with a CUP, it has absolutely no effect on him whatsoever. If he's operating without a CUP, then he's operating illegally, and he's going to continue to operate probably illegally, and this moratorium is not going to have any effect on anybody in the city operating illegally. It just says we're not going to begin the process to legalize any illegal transient rentals at this time, and then we are going to promulgate some sort of a new ordinance which may go down the path as you suggested, where it's an annual permit fee. It might be it probably won't be a CUP, but it'll be some sort of a regulation if we allow them. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adopt an urgency ordinance declaring a moratorium on the issuance of conditional use permits for transient rentals in residential zoning districts for a period of 45 days, if that's enough for the motion, Mr. Howard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Second.
Roll call.
The understanding that it may be extended by this council.
Clapp.
Yes.
Wyrick.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes. I'm going to close as the city council. I'm going to open as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency. And I will entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Yeah, here, second.
Second.
Roll call.
Clapp.
Yes.
Wyrick.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes. I'll move to item number 11, the resolution authorizing transfer of property at 408 North Montgomery Street to the city of Ojai, serving as a housing successor agency.
So, thank you. Yeah, this is the property that was owned by the redevelopment agency, transferred to the successor agency by operation of law. And there was a state law indicating that you need a long-range property management plan for properties that are owned by the successor agency. And we've been fighting with them for a year, and we finally realized that we don't have to have that fight. We can transfer this back to the city, of all things, because the city is designated as the housing successor agency to the redevelopment agency. So we're recommending that you authorize that. We then have to take this to the oversight board, and it has to be approved by the Department of Finance, but those should be routine because it's a housing-related property.
Quick question.
Yes, Councilmember Wyrick.
I noticed a discussion that it was acquired for the purpose of affordable housing, and it states down at the bottom, once transferred, the property will become available for use for affordable housing. Was the acquisition inclusive of that stipulation, and will that stipulation carry?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. We could turn it, we could open to public comment, right?
Sure.
Discussion. Anybody wishing to speak on this item? No? Turn it back to council and entertain a motion. I'll move to adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to execute the quitclaim deed transferring the property at 408 North Montgomery Street to the city of Ojai, serving as a housing successor agency.
Second.
Roll call.
Clapp.
Yes.
Wyrick.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes. I will close as the successor agency and reconvene as the city council. Do I have any reports from council members?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Wyrick.
And then, hopefully we'll do this with Councilperson Clapp. Because, first, we have had another focus group meeting. 3 meetings. And I think the consensus there is developed a lot of information, a lot of reading material, a lot of research that is just coming out, which is very instructive. And our feeling that we wanted to come back to council with after our last focus meeting yesterday afternoon is that we move to a full-blown public workshop as soon as possible. And we were looking, and we feel like this is important because it's an issue of vital economic interest. There's a lot of property owners that want to provide input. The focus group format is not appropriate for that. We need to really open it up and hear everyone out, and also provide a public education as to what's been developed in terms of case law on this. There was just, for example, the San Francisco ordinance was challenged in court and was just upheld. The challenge was dismissed. So there's a lot going on right now. So from a public education point of view and for the purpose of getting public input, we feel the next step is a workshop.
And we did have some tentative dates, the 20th of April, and the 23rd of April.
And we're trying to look on the calendar when things weren't.
Yeah, it's tough.
Otherwise
It's
going
really,
on.
It's really tough.
Would it be held here in the chambers or in the rec center?
We're thinking the rec center because I think this is going to be a topic of great interest for the community. So I think it should be held at Boyd Center.
Okay. And so how will we notify the public when the dates are confirmed? Are we working with staff? Is that future
We wanted
Yes.
to, well, we wanted to.
First, we need to see if the date's reasonable.
We also wanted to know if you agree that after 3 meetings, that it's appropriate for us to reach out to the public for a public workshop.
I would, and I think that it's important also to supply some of that material. I don't know if we could do it online.
We can.
Or somehow so that the public could have access to what you guys have.
A lot of it is available online. Some of the documents are 30 pages double-sided. So I think printing out enough copies for everyone would be maybe cost prohibitive.
Just putting it online
But,
and
yeah,
letting us click on
But
it.
having that information
Couldn't
available.
we establish a special workshop link with all the materials
Yeah.
associated with that link as soon as we get a
I think
workshop
that's
date?
the most realistic thing to do.
Yeah, that would be my only recommendation, but I don't know if other council members have any.
We also felt that it would be important to have a facilitator with this. I don't know, Mr. Clark, whether you could give us some guidance on how we could do that. If
Yeah,
it would
we
be
can-
too expensive, if,
We can check with other communities that have had facilitated processes and see if there's some, I'm sure there are some well-qualified people out
I know
there.
we had a facilitator for the chain store ordinance debate, public workshop. I don't recall who it was.
This is a front burner issue for the League of California Cities as well.
Right.
And maybe they could be contacted and see if, they might well have somebody lined up for this. Because this is becoming more and more of a focus. In fact, when Councilman Haney and I went to the Channel Cities dinner, I ran into the district coordinator for California Cities, and they were most interested in what we're doing and most interested in providing assistance. So perhaps they have a resource person.
I was thinking you guys would be the facilitators.
Don't think that would be appropriate.
Just facilitating. It's not creating a bias. But okay, so that sounds good. Good information. Thank you guys. Thank you both.
Does everyone agree that we want to have a workshop? Okay. 20th or the 23rd, pardon me, let me look
Yes.
again.
Yeah, we have to wait for, I think, the city manager to
Yeah, I mean, that
look at
was.
the logistics.
That's what we tossed around, and also if you
Yeah,
found a facilitator.
it might take a little bit more,
Yeah.
if even if we find a facilitator, it's going to depend on their dates of availability.
So it may
too.
be more hinge on that.
So stay tuned. Any other reports from other council members? No? I do. Or I know we're just reporting. It's
It's a focus group and a workshop regarding.
okay. Oh, on the transient. Sorry, yeah, transient vacation rentals. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, we're looking at how, we're looking at introducing some changes to our ordinances with regarding to short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a good question. Thanks. Any other reports? No, I do want to report that I did also go to a conference this week, the Hawaii,
Awani.
No, Awani conference. It's from the government it's local government commission. And I would urge any council member or anybody in the future to participate in that conference. I just found it through a checklist from the California League of California Cities. They provided it, and it was just an amazing conference. It was all about community input, getting the community to come in, and sustainability, and not just sustainability and just in general, that has to do with environment, but everything. And it had really good topics, and I'll come re-energized and ready to do more work with more ideas. So other than that, that's it. But I'll turn it back to city manager. Any reports?
First of all, I'd like to thank Amber for doing an excellent job pinch hitting tonight.
And wish Rhonda to get well soon. too.
Absolutely, yes, we all do. And I just wanted to mention that Rudy and I are deeply engrossed in developing a budget right now, and our goal is to have that out at the beginning of May. And we'll be coming back to you with a schedule for reviewing the proposed budget.
Rob, if I might, one quick comment is that We are, as Rob said, we are in the process of working that through. We've got a real quick first cut at the general fund, and so we'll get going from there. I have spoken with Councilmember Wyrick, and we talked about possibly bringing this to the finance, I'm not sure what we call it here in the city of Ojai, the Finance and Audit Committee.
Yes.
Approximately the third week of April. So just let you know that that's what our intention is. And so we will be sending out invitations for that, and I believe the mayor is on that committee as well as Councilmember Wyrick. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you a report on that. That's where we're moving forward with that. So you will have some input there, and then as the process goes, hopefully by that date, we should have, a lot of refinements made in the budget, and we should be able to sit down and talk with you about where we think the priorities are for the city.
Great. Thank you. City Attorney?
A couple ancillary questions about that really quick.
Yes.
Any update on the drafts from the Sheriff's Department on the new enforcement services contract and/or clarification as to what's going to be asked of us, final draft form on the animal services contract?
So there's nothing on a sheriff's contract, and so I'm certain that if a sheriff's contract comes forward, it's not going to be for fiscal year 15-16.
So that was the original expectation, was they were going to have a new contract for this fiscal year cycle.
I'm not even sure. It was a little bit vague, but it was that they were going to come out with a proposed contract by June or so. But
maybe Captain Kinney has some comments
Rob,
on that.
I could comment is that there is a proposed contract, but it's with county council, and they are looking at possibly June, but it's over with county council right now. So however long it takes them to give their approval, but that's where it's at.
I was just wondering whether it would be included in this budget cycle.
I don't believe so. It'd be June at the earliest. And
okay.
So in both cases with the police services contract and the animal services contract, the primary issue is kind of like the charge master. How are charges allocated between all the different agencies? And so there can only be one formula by which charges are allocated. And at this point in time, with the animal services contract, there's really no agreement among the cities on what that is. But the animal services director has basically put down her foot and said, here's what we're offering. And so that'll be coming forward to this city council to review at the April 14th meeting.
Okay. Can I ask Captain Kinney a question on this? Is that all right? On the law enforcement services contract, it did come to my attention that the operational stipulations of the law enforcement services contract haven't really been changed since the late 70s, which is what prompted my questioning of, and then it came back to me, oh, well, they're going to be looking at some changes. Is it your feeling, and obviously some of those stipulations are a little out of date, from 1977 in terms of our current contractual relationship. In terms of in the current coming fiscal year, is the sheriff open to any discussion at all of just this city engaged in looking at some of those clarifying stipulation regarding the services relationship, not necessarily monetary? Or is he absolutely pretty set on everything being the same for every city?
So again, let me answer that first, and then Captain Kinney may have something to add. Really, the primary thing that is set by the contract is the charge master. What does it cost for each level of service? But Sheriff Dean is actually very willing to sit down and talk to any city at any time about what services are provided. So the mix of services and how they're provided is pretty much always up for discussion. And if we have desires for the next fiscal year that are different than what we're doing for this fiscal year, we don't have to wait for the contract to engage in that kind of conversation.
Thank you.
So I guess if we do want to discuss the contract, we should probably put it on their agenda so we can know
Budget audit
exactly,
committee
yeah,
to talk
not
about.
just to leave it out there in the open, because it is a very good question.
So
Councilman Boyd.
that pretty much automatically comes up as part of the budget process.
Budget, okay.
So we will propose a budget based on the current level of service, but if the city council wants to consider different levels of service, we can certainly start that conversation through the budget process.
Great. Any reports from our interim city attorney?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, no.
Anything from our chief?
Just wanted to announce that our Citizen Academy, our Spring Citizen Academy is going to start here in the beginning of April. So it's a 10-week course that gives the citizens an overview of what your police officers do. So if anyone's interested, they can pick up a application at the PD. So we encourage them to apply.
Great, thank you. Anything from?
I have a question for Karen.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying. There was been discussion about the compliance officer maybe working with the volunteers in policing to try to extend the eyes and ears of the compliance officer.
Yeah.
I was wondering if any further discussions have been made along these lines. And number one, well, I guess that's it. Yeah, in terms of just exploring getting more bang for the buck in that fashion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything from our Public Works Director?
Something very brief. It would be, I think Deborah Pendry already mentioned that this Saturday, we're having a community cleanup day in cooperation with the county. So that's first time the city's done that, as far as anybody recollects. And so that'll be over at the Nordhoff High School in the parking lot. And yeah, the public was notified. Everybody's mailer for the Harrisonville has a flyer in there that's dedicated to it. So we basically did a direct mailing to all the residents in the city through the Harrisonville, and it informs people about that, as well as we have advertisements in the Ojai Valley News on, let's say, last week, Wednesday, Friday, and this week as well. So anyways, that's going on from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And that was set to be the same date that the Pollution Prevention Center down at the county operates, down off the Avenue, is open on the same day. So anybody comes over to the event that has hazardous waste or anything can have that disposed of down there. And then secondly, I want to mention that the Complete Streets Master Plan kickoff meeting already occurred with the Complete Streets Committee, and we're just set up the date for the Complete Streets workshop, which will be a 3-day workshop with the community. And that's on April 14, 15, and 16, so we'll get the word out on that as well. We just set the date. We had some trouble finding a facility, but we were going to be at the Ojai Valley Women's Center down the street, which is a nice place to be. And that'll be has different segments, and we'll have that advertised in the paper as well as get the word out to the council and everybody else. It has portions with the committee we're working with, and then with the community, and then it has a wrap-up each day with the community, so if people just want to come and hear what's going on, they can.
I have a real quick question. What time of day are you planning to do this? This is during the week.
It's during the week, and the intention is to have workshops with the committee in the early day, and then let the consultant work for a while on their own in the middle of the day, and then the end of the day would be open to the public. Those times aren't exactly set, but roughly 3 to 5 or 6, and then have a wrap-up at 5 or 6 o'clock to 7 that'll recap what's being discussed for that day. Each day will have a theme. There'll be certain things like bike and pedestrian on one day, and the next day it might be the safety issues like pedestrian crosswalks and other safety issues in your community.
Just a little input. Not everybody is in town between 3 and 5 during the week. A lot of people work.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that this could be done at a time that other people could participate that are working?
There's discussion about that, and we were considering going 3 to 6, which would allow at least an hour of input for people to get in and have their input.
Mm-hmm.
And then the public recap meeting at roughly, whether that's 5:30 or 6,
Mm-hmm.
would be still basically telling the community what was discussed for that day, and then a lot of its input that comes back at them as well.
What's the reluctance to do it later?
I think there's some overlap with all the different commission meetings and the council meetings, and trying to make it work in amongst those schedules and the consultant schedules as well.
I just feel this is a really important matter.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hold a public workshop that is held during business hours, working hours for the majority of people in the community, it's really not giving them the opportunity to participate. I'm not comfortable with that.
It's a difficult, I think, even if I agree with you, I think it's difficult, even if we schedule in the evening, sometimes people are so tired that they don't even want to go do it. It's about getting public input. And I'm a strong believer with technology. I think there has to be some way where we connect with people and get their comments via either website or any type of social media or applications. There's things out there nowadays that the city of LA is doing to try to communicate with their citizens, because they only get like a 10% involvement out of the whole city population. So that's 10%. And they're they're doing the same thing, and they're thinking about new innovative ways to introduce ways to get public to participate and just come out and get involved. So I think it's a difficult situation no matter what time we do it. It's just something to think about and possibly put on our agenda. So
Yeah, it's not set in stone now, so we still have flexibility on it. And the consultants seem to say typically they do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or else Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The Friday, it seemed to be most people in the complete streets and so on felt like it wasn't ideal either.
Friday's
most people
not a good
are
day.
kind of done.
It's just more the time of day. Most people work out of town because, as we all know, there's not that much employment in town. It takes a half an hour for me to drive home from Ventura. Some people are an hour away. Even if it was started at 4 and ended at 7, at least people that were out of town could catch a fairly large percentage of it.
It seems like most people want to come right after work. You know, the
Yeah.
5:30 slot till 6:30 is
And-
ideal. They could get the recap and then provide input at the same time.
we could just have a follow-up. I know we do have to keep going.
Okay.
I don't see any more department heads out there. Miss Young, anything? Done a fabulous job.
No, thank you very much, Mayor.
And with that, then we're gonna go into closed session, and I guess we aren't supposed to come with any type of announcement. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you have 3 closed sessions: performance evaluation, city manager; performance evaluation, interim city attorney; public employment, city attorney, should you want to still discuss anything about the proposals that you don't feel you've reached yet. I don't anticipate you'll be reporting out on any of these items, and it's appropriate now to recess to closed session.
okay, so we'll recess to closed session. Thank you.